The world was always watching him. Cameras followed him in airports, on quiet streets, even when he was just trying to buy coffee like a normal person. People whispered about him, wrote about him, created stories about him. But Keanu Reeves never let the noise change the softness of his heart. He lived simple, walked with quiet steps, and carried grief that the world could not see. And even though millions admired him, he was used to being alone in rooms full of people. But everything changed on a quiet evening when Sandra Bullock appeared in his life again. They had worked together before, laughed together before, had felt a connection that neither of them really spoke about. It was the kind of connection that did not need words, the kind where silence felt warm instead of empty. But life had taken them different ways, different relationships, different heartbreaks, different losses. Sandra had been through her own storms. She had trusted people who were not kind. She had loved with her whole heart only to watch pieces of it fall and break. She smiled for the world, laughed for cameras, but when she was alone at night, her heart felt tired and heavy. She had learned how to hide sadness behind grace. But Keanu, he could see through her mask instantly. When they met again at a small private gathering, she was sitting outside alone, looking at the sky as if searching for something she once lost. The night felt still, soft, fragile. Keanu walked out and sat beside her quietly. Not close, not far, just near enough to show he was there. For a long time, they didn't say anything. They didn't need to. Finally, Sandra whispered, her voice thin and tired. I feel like everyone thinks I am strong, and I am so tired of being strong. Keanu looked at her with a gentle sadness in his eyes. He understood those words. He had lived those words. You don't have to be strong with me, he said softly. The way he said it felt like safety. Not in a romantic way, not in a dramatic way. Just warm, steady, real. Sandra closed her eyes and breathed slowly, feeling something inside her heart soften. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't pretending. They talked that night. Not about fame, not about movies, not about the world. They talked about pain, about losing people, about trying to heal, about waking up every day and choosing to keep going even when it hurts. Both of them had known grief deeply. Both of them had known loneliness even while surrounded by others. There was no judgment, no pressure, no performance. Just two souls who recognized each other. And at that moment, something quietly shifted between them. Not love, not yet, but a beginning. A soft, steady beginning that the world would never understand. And soon, the world would start talking. The next days passed quietly. But something had changed inside both of them. Sandra found herself thinking about that night more than she expected. Not because of dramatic words or romantic moments, but because of how safe she had felt. It had been so long since she could simply exist beside someone without being judged or compared. Or watched. Keanu, too, carried the evening with him. He remembered the way her voice had shaken, the way she had tried so hard to hide her sadness. He understood that kind of exhaustion. He understood what it meant to keep going even when your heart felt worn thin. He knew the courage it takes to simply breathe sometimes. One afternoon, Sandra sent him a message. Just simple words. Are you free? Keanu read it and smiled gently to himself. His reply was just as simple. Always. They met in a small cafe where no one expected to see famous people. The place smelled like warm bread and quiet mornings. Sandra wore no makeup, just a soft sweater and tired eyes that still held a flicker of light. Keanu looked the same as always, calm, gentle, ordinary in the most extraordinary way. They talked about small things at first. The weather, books, old memories that made them laugh a little. But it didn't take long for silence to wrap around them again. Silence was never uncomfortable between them. Silence felt like a language they both understood. After a while, Sandra looked at him and said quietly, people think I have everything, but I feel so alone sometimes. Keanu nodded slowly. The world thinks having everything means you are not allowed to be sad. Sandra's eyes softened. She felt seen, understood. Not pitied. He continued, but sadness does not care who you are. Grief does not care about fame. Loneliness does not care how many people know your name. Tears filled Sandra's eyes. But they did not fall. She blinked them away carefully. She was tired of crying, tired of breaking, but she was also tired of holding it all inside. I hate when people turn my pain into gossip, she whispered. I trusted someone I loved with everything I had, but they treated my heart like something disposable. Keanu's jaw tightened for a brief second, not in anger, but in empathy, deep, real empathy. Some people do not know how to hold love gently, he said. But that does not mean your love was wrong. It means theirs was too small. Those words, they went straight to her soul. For a long moment, neither spoke. The cafe around them faded into a distant hum. Finally, Sandra reached across the table and lightly touched his hand. Not romantic, not dramatic. Just connection. Keanu did not move away. He did not make it bigger than it was. He simply held her hand back, softly, like he was holding something fragile and important. And from that small touch, something real began to grow, slow, careful, honest. The world would talk, but they would not rush, because healing is not fast, and love, the real kind, is quiet at first. Words spread faster than either of them expected. It began with a picture taken at the cafe, blurry, taken from outside a window. Just Keanu and Sandra sitting together, hands almost touching. But that was enough. Within hours, the internet was full of whispers, questions, rumors, predictions. Some called it love. Some called it scandal. Some said it was just publicity. The world did what the world always does. It turned something private into a stage. Sandra saw the articles the next morning, headlines flashing with assumptions. She felt her stomach tighten. Her hands began to tremble, just a little. She had only just begun to heal. She wasn't ready for the world's eyes. She wasn't ready for people to twist something gentle into something loud. She texted Keanu. They are talking about us. He replied almost instantly. I know. I'm on my way. When he arrived, he didn't knock loudly or rush in. He walked in quiet, like his presence was a soft blanket settling over the room. Sandra stood by the window, arms folded, breathing uneven. I didn't want this, she whispered. I don't want my pain to become another headline. Keanu stepped closer but didn't touch her. He respected her space. He respected her heart. Look at me, he said softly. She turned. We know the truth, he continued. We know what this is. We know what it is not. The world will talk no matter what we do. But we do not have to listen. His voice was steady, like a calm tide washing over a storm. But Sandra's voice shook when she answered. I just don't want this to ruin anything. I don't want to lose this, whatever this is. Keanu finally reached out and gently placed his hand on hers, but not to hold her, simply to anchor her. You won't lose me, he said. I don't leave when things get loud. A quiet tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, but from relief. She didn't know how much she needed to hear those words until he said them. Later that week, Sandra was invited to a large industry event. Cameras, interviews, questions, everything that made her chest tighten. She didn't want to go alone, but she also didn't want to hide. So she asked him, will you come with me? Keanu nodded without hesitation. Of course. When they walked into the room, the noise shifted. Eyes turned. Whispers began. But something different happened too. Keanu did not stand in front of Sandra. He did not stand behind her either. He stood beside her. Not claiming her, not hiding her, not protecting her like she was fragile. But standing with her. As an equal, as someone who understood what it meant to be human in a world that forgot celebrities are people to. And that simple act, standing beside her, made the whispers grow louder. The world talked more. But Sandra felt steadier. Because sometimes strength does not come from facing the world alone. Sometimes strength comes from knowing someone is truly, quietly, deeply standing with you. The noise did not quiet down. If anything, it grew louder. People online began making assumptions, creating stories, judging something they did not understand. Sandra tried her best to ignore it, but her heart still carried old wounds. She had been hurt before. She had been misunderstood before. She had seen how quickly admiration could turn into criticism. And now, once again, she felt the weight of being seen. But this time, she was not alone. One evening, after a long day, Sandra sat on her couch, her phone filled with messages from friends, reporters, and strangers. She did not respond to any of them. Her hands trembled, her chest heavy with worry. When Keanu arrived, he noticed instantly. He walked to her slowly, sat down beside her, and waited. She swallowed hard before speaking. "What if people think we are something we are not?" she whispered. Keanu looked at her gently. "People will always think something," he said. "But only we know what is real. And what is real does not need defending." She took a shaky breath. "I just don't want to damage you. I know how the world can twist things. I know how they can turn kindness into something to mock." Keanu shook his head softly. "You cannot damage me by being honest. And you cannot damage me by being part of my life." Just then, her phone buzzed again. She ignored it, but Keanu reached for it gently and turned it face down on the table. "The world can wait," he said. The room fell quiet, soft, safe. The silence did not weigh on them anymore. It held them, after some time. Sandra finally asked something that had been quietly growing inside her. "Why do you stay, Keanu? You could walk away and life would be easier." Keanu lowered his eyes, thinking deeply before answering. He took his time. He did not rush the truth. "Because," he said softly, "I know what it feels like when people walk away instead of understanding. I know what it feels like to grieve alone. I know what it feels like when the world talks loudly and no one listens to your heart." He paused, his voice almost a whisper. "And I will not be part of that kind of pain in your life. I stay because your heart deserves someone who does not run." Those words did not feel dramatic. They felt real, honest, steady. Sandra felt tears build in her eyes. But this time they did not fall from sadness. They fell from recognition. Someone understood her. Someone saw her. Someone stayed. That night, they sat on the balcony again. The same place where their quiet connection had first returned. The city lights below flickered like stars on earth. Sandra rested her head on Keanu's shoulder. Not romantically, not desperately. Just peacefully. And in that moment, something shifted once again. No longer just connection, but trust. Trust that was earned quietly, patiently, gently. The world outside kept talking. But inside, in that quiet space between two souls, there was only warmth. The world kept talking, louder and louder. But something different was happening inside Sandra. Instead of shrinking under the noise, she began to grow quietly stronger. Not because the rumors stopped hurting, not because the comments didn't sting, but because she no longer carried everything alone. One afternoon, she walked into a studio for a meeting about a new film project. She hadn't worked in a while, choosing instead to rest and rebuild herself. But now she felt something like readiness, gentle, fragile, but real. The moment she walked in, eyes shifted, whispers started. She could feel it, that familiar tightness in her chest, like invisible hands pressing on her ribs. The fear wanted to rise, the old fear that once swallowed her whole. But then she remembered Keanu's voice, calm and steady. "You won't lose me. I don't leave when things get loud." She took a slow breath, and she stayed. The meeting went well, better than she expected. She didn't try to impress anyone. She didn't perform strength. She simply existed as herself. And to her surprise, that was enough. After the meeting, she stepped outside to the courtyard. The sunlight touched her gently. She closed her eyes and breathed. That's when she heard familiar footsteps. Keanu didn't say hello when he reached her. He simply stood beside her, just close enough for their shoulders to almost touch, just far enough to give her space. Sandra opened her eyes and smiled softly. "How did you know I needed you here?" she asked. Keanu looked at her with quiet honesty. "I didn't," he said. "I just wanted to be wherever your heart would feel lighter." She laughed, a small, soft laugh that surprised her, because it felt real. But life, of course, is not always gentle. That evening, a new headline appeared, loud, dramatic, invasive. It claimed Keanu and Sandra were secretly together. It questioned their intentions. It twisted every gentle moment into something sensational. People online debated them like characters in a story instead of real human beings. Sandra saw it. Her breath caught. Her hands tensed. But before fear could take over, her phone buzzed. A message from Keanu. "Don't read their version of us. Come outside." She stepped out onto her porch, and there he was, not with flowers, not with explanations, not with promises. Just with presence. He stepped closer, very slowly, so she could choose the distance. Let them talk, he said. We will live, and living is louder than any rumor. Sandra felt her heart steady, not suddenly, not magically, but gently, like a tired heartbeat remembering its rhythm. She looked at him and whispered, I don't know what this is becoming. Keanu nodded. Neither do I, he said. And we don't need to define it. We only need to honor it. Quietly, honestly, together, the world would keep talking. But the world did not get to decide the meaning of what they shared. Only they did. And in that shared quiet, something deep was beginning to form. Time moved slowly, but something gentle and steady continued to grow between them. It was not rushed, not loud, not pushed by expectations. It was a connection built in quiet moments, sitting side by side, sharing coffee, walking in silence, breathing through fear together. The world kept talking, kept assuming, kept writing stories that did not belong to them. But Keanu and Sandra had learned to live beneath the noise, where truth is soft and steady. One evening, they met at the same quiet cafe where everything had quietly begun. The sky outside was turning a warm shade of gold, fading into soft blue. Sandra looked different now, not because her appearance had changed, but because the weight in her eyes had softened. She looked present. She looked real. She looked like someone who had walked through a storm and found shelter. Keanu noticed. He always noticed. How are you feeling today? He asked gently. Sandra took a breath, slow, calm, honest. I feel like myself again. Not completely, but I am getting there. Keanu nodded with the softest smile. Healing is not finished in one day, he said, but you are walking forward. That is enough. They sat for a while without speaking. The silence felt full, warm, safe. Then Sandra looked at him with something clear and steady in her expression. Do you regret being part of this? She asked. Not afraid, just curious, honest. Keanu shook his head slowly, his voice calm and sure. Not for a single moment. He said, I chose this. I chose to be here, with you, no matter what the world says. Sandra's eyes softened, and she reached out her hand. Not shaking this time, not unsure. She placed it gently over his. Keanu did not move suddenly. He simply turned his hand and held hers in return. The world outside the window kept rushing, kept shining, kept shouting. But inside the cafe, time slowed. There was no need to name the feeling between them. No need to label it. No need to define love before it was ready to speak its own name. What they shared was something deeper, something rare. It was the kind of connection that grows slowly, like a quiet dawn rising behind mountains. Later, as they walked outside, the street was quiet, and the evening breeze was soft. Sandra stopped and looked up at the sky, her hands still in his. Maybe, she whispered. The world will always talk. Keanu nodded gently. Let them talk, he said. We will live. She smiled, a real smile, one born from healing, from truth, from presence. And Keanu smiled too, a smile that was small but full of meaning. Their story was not about headlines, not about gossip, not about fame. It was about two souls who had been broken by life and who chose, slowly, gently, patiently, to learn how to breathe again, together.